Greetings, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. Today we have our friend, guest streamer Matt Tack from Tampa, Florida. He is a podcaster, public speaker, entrepreneur, health aficionado focusing on functional wellness, and you can find him at alessifx.com. I'm not going to spell that. Link's in the description below. We're going to get right back to him in 2 seconds. For my part, would you kindly like, share, subscribe, tell your friends? Always need more volunteer dreamers, and I mean, I will talk to anybody. I'll talk to you. You don't have to be an aficionado of anything in particular. Just a human being with a dream. Also, more viewers for the video game streams Monday through Friday, most days, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific, on multiple channels, YouTube, Rumble, etc. Trying out BitChute this week. We'll see if that works. This episode brought to you in part by ABC Book 7. Tyrion's Dreams and Visions. It is a missive penned by a 1700s, late 1700s doctor who worked at the British psychiatric hospital, St. Bethlehem, I think is what it was called. And that's where we get the word Bedlam, as in it's a madhouse, it's Bedlam. Fascinating historical perspective from this guy, one of the first medical professionals to advocate for patients' rights in terms of who is or is not allowed to visit, because they used to, you'd pay a tuppence on a Sunday to go laugh at the crazy people in the institution, and that's part of how they collected their donations. This is going on way too long. Buy the book. You can see it on the screen over there. Also, all this and more, of course, at BenjaminTheDreamWizard.com, including downloadable MP3 versions of this very podcast. All the cocktails, custom cocktails I make for the video game streams. That's a fun thing I do, so you can drink along with the wizard. Follow all laws of your state and local municipalities, of course. And finally, if you'd head on over to BenjaminTheDreamWizard.locals.com, building a community there. It's attached to my Rumble account, free to join. You can give me money or not. I just would love to have folks interested in dreams come and talk to me and share your perspective. That is way more out of me than I expected. Matt, thank you for being here. I appreciate your time.
Oh, no, that was great, man. Keep it going. I love it. I'm excited to be here.
The more I say that, the more comes rambling out of my brain sometimes. And it's like in the beginning, I didn't do any introduction. I would just jump straight into it. And then I'm like, well, I got a website. I should probably plug that. Well, I do video games. I should probably plug that. It's like, and it's just gone on for way too long. So anyway, we're here to talk to Matt, and we're gonna kind of keep it tight today. He's on a time budget, so I can do episodes that are longer or shorter, whatever you got. I've done one as long as 4.5 hours because that person had a lot of questions and very, very many details, and I've gone as short as 45 minutes because time being what it is. So I will say to you, Matt, just if it looks like you got to go, just let me know. We'll wrap it up wherever. That's perfectly fine with me.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So tell me about alessifx.com, your advocacy in health, and your podcast, wherever you want to start.
Yeah, for sure. Well, my dream, I think came out at a young age, I would say. Just growing up, I dreamed about being a professional basketball player. You see the basketballs behind me? Yeah. That was my dream. I always wanted to be a professional basketball player. That dream did not work out. I think it was a little too short. But one of the cool things that has transpired is this concept that we have at Alessi FX Health is the forever athlete. We enjoy kind of the nature of hobbies and sports and maintaining a standard of health. And so we've, what's transpired over really a number of years is just keeping myself in optimal health so I can enjoy those sporting activities. So I still play basketball, I still play golf, I still do those things. And so that's what is derived out of Alessi. We own a chiropractor and functional wellness clinic here in Tampa Bay. And that's ultimately what keeps us moving. Is a lot of it stands behind kind of the legacy that I bring to my kids too, though, of optimal health and what that looks like. But the dream now is just is really maintaining that forever athlete for as long as possible. So I dream about that every day, of just maintaining and doing the things that I love. So that's ultimately how I dream today.
That's very cool. Excuse me. Yeah, that makes me think of my particular situations, but broad strokes, the idea of being healthy and active at any age. You can do it. I mean, maybe you can't sprint across a football field and tackle someone anymore. You get a little too old for that, but you can find another hobby that keeps you moving, keeps you know, people play with golf into their 80s. There's always something you can do. Then you get into my situation, you look at me, and I'm a little husky, we might say. I'm a person of size.
I'm digging the beard though, man. The beard's phenomenal.
Thank you very much. And actually, you know, kind of the fat smooths out the wrinkles. I'm older than I look. But the idea that, you know, so for me, my favorite activity is actually sitting completely still and letting my thoughts move. Instead of my body, I'm not a big fan of exercise. I don't like sweating. I don't like being tired and out of breath and all that good stuff. So, but I don't enjoy sports personally. That does not motivate me. But you know, yard work, tinkering around the house, doing this, that, or the other, just that kind of physical activity is actually enjoyable. So in a lot of ways, it's more finding the activity that you enjoy that is activity, to keep your body moving at any age. I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be flat out honest. Agree to disagree. One of those things.
Sure.
I think the agreement is the body always needs to move. I think there's an element of like health in that. So you always need to move. I think that's like when you become static is when things become like how, for instance, you say like moving your mind. That's part of the moving process too, is like moving your mind and empowering your mind. I love all the things. That's why I was like enjoying listening to you starting off the podcast is because like you're obviously you're a doer, you're a creator, and you're creating these elements of community, which I love. Like I think actually that's probably the most important thing, is that element of community. I think we're lacking that in really today's society too. So I love the movement and the culture that you're bringing. I do believe that, you know, we just believe that there's element of like intentional discomfort though too. And so that's maybe where the slight disagreement on that side is the intentional discomfort and the resistance training. Not everyone's going to love that. And I surely do not love it. Trust me. Yeah. Going into the gym is not something that like, I'm like, man, I would say I love to do. My wife thinks I love to do it, but really at the end of the day, I truly don't. Yeah. But it is one of those things where I think there's an element of intentional discomfort that's good, but then not an overindulgence. So I'm not asking anyone to be a maniac like me, because I truly am. Like when I go in to the gym, I go in with some serious intention. Like I'm ripping those ripping those weights apart. But I think, you know, if somebody could really, if we could just 2 to 3 days a week of doing something with its super intentional discomfort, where it's like resistance training, where you have a kettlebell at home. That's what I love about kettlebells, is that you can do things at home and then you can do them in like literally as minimum of 5. You're really getting a solid workout at 10. But if you had a kettlebell workout and programmed in 3 to 4 things, I actually, in my app, I have a like kind of a starting set where of getting people just gradually kind of motivated, that are super, super easy to do, but you can knock them out in 10 minutes. And so by doing that, you can have some sort of resistance. So picking up a 40 or 30 pound kettlebell, or even 20 pounds, at the end of the day, of getting that movement, but it's ancillary resistance against your body, that's intentional discomfort, I think is really critical. And if you do that 2 to 3 times a week, it makes a pretty dramatic impact. So that's where I say agree to disagree. Yeah. I think there just needs to be a touch, like even if you absolutely doggone hate it, I'd say incorporate just a little bit of it, into your day to day, that allows you to see that level of growth.
Yeah, I guess maybe I wouldn't say I don't disagree. I wouldn't say I disagree, is what I'm trying to get out there. I would say I don't disagree with you, actually, is that I probably should be doing those things. And yeah, I'm definitely choosing not to engage in that intentional discomfort. So it's a good point to say that, yeah, sometimes it's going to suck and it's going to take voluntary dedication to the thing, to the plan. Make the plan because it's good for you up here. And then I did used to be a lot more active and fit. I did Aikido, martial art for 5 years. And, before that, I was always doing different kind of exercise stuff. But one of the instructors, well, the founder of this American school, he said that, in Aikido, we don't move our body because we have energy. We move our body because we tell our body to move. Basically, the function of that. So it's like a mind over matter type of thing of like, you do this not because you're naturally drawn to it or it's essentially pleasurable, but because it's necessary, that it's something you should be doing. So I'll be honest, I've been struggling with that lately in terms of like, I should get out and just take a walk at least. Just go up the block or something. Just do something. And that's where I get into the yard work thing. I'm like, well, there's always something that needs to be done around here. If I'm going to invest energy in something, it's going to be cleaning up a pile of something that's been sitting there for a year because I've been putting it off. Okay, let's bend and stretch and lift and do all the physical stuff that comes with that, accomplishing the yard work. And there's a good point a fair point to say that that's not necessarily a substitute, because there's a lot of yard work that's very low impact. It's not cardio. You're not lifting anything heavy. It's kind of puttering around, and that's maybe not quite enough to get the job done, to get the real health benefits from it.
Yeah, and I would say that when you do the other things, like if you were to pick up a kettlebell, that yard work becomes a little bit easier too. It might be where you're preparing your back for, being on your knees and doing more yard work throughout the day. It's almost like a preventative measure to strengthening those muscles. 3 things that we believe in are mindset, nutrition, and muscle. So the mindset piece being like, again, I go back to the community piece of like, hey, do you have maybe a small community that like can lift you up around that? And then the nutrition is another thing, like how are we incorporating nutrition to fuel our mind, but then also fuel the performance and muscle for the purposes of longevity. So, and to do things we enjoy. So like if yard work is something we enjoy, how are we protecting, our legs, our knees, our back, so that, that long day with doing a lot of yard work, maybe trimming down some big limbs or doing some hedges. I remember my dad would always send me to my grandma's house, and it took us 8 hours to do her hedges. It's a lot of hedges, and I like how painful that was. But at the end of the day, like obviously as we get older, if we add in those resistance type training mechanisms, it makes trimming the hedges a lot easier.
Oh yeah, for sure. That just brought a story back to mind. I was super young, like 14, 15, something like that. And I was trimming the hedges out in front of my parents' house. I don't even know how I did that. Like I had the cord draped over the hedges on accident or something because I was pulling it. And then I did a sweeping motion and chunk hit the cord, and that vibration, that electrical shock went up through me, like, and I actually fell over backwards, and I was looking up at the sky, and the sky is doing this whole Technicolor thing, and I'm like, whoa, I just got shocked. Apropos of nothing, you just brought that memory back to mind. That was a funny experience. I can say I've been electrocuted, and it probably shows in my crazy thoughts and behavior. It's all part of the puzzle. That's fun.
That's
too.
Awesome.
So you say you have a podcast. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, where people can find it and what the focus is, kind of how you structure your episodes, anything.
Yeah. No, we have the Full Fueled podcast. We love doing that. So we've been doing that for a little over a year now. Not quite as many as Benjamin the Dream Wizard. I love the fact that you're on episode 176.
That's crazy.
It's nuts,
man. By the time
That's
I hit
longevity.
1,000, I'll be a real wizard.
That's right. And I love the concept of that, right? Because it's there's so much. There's so many people start, but they the consistency is really what builds it up and makes it compound. So kudos to you, man. That's awesome. We're on about our 50th episode. Mm-hmm. I think we're a little over 50 now. We focus on exactly what I aforementioned. We focus on mindset, nutrition, and muscle. Those are the main things. We do kind of operate within our pillars: fuel, movement, sleep, mind, spirit, work are the pillars that we operate off of and that we like talking about. We just bring in various guests sometimes, or sometimes we just do short episodes based on kind of the interest. We did talk about in our last episode an element of like biohacking and different things that we use specifically as to kind of aid ourselves in performance on day to day. So we'll range everything from kind of spirit driven stuff all the way to how we're operating with fuel, and then different biohacks that we incorporate. We're always trying new things at the clinic to then bring. We're like the guinea pigs, so we try out a lot of things, and then we obviously promote them on our podcast.
Yeah, that's good too to have that personal experience with different stuff. It's not just taking a sponsor's word and saying, "Hey, I took money. Here's a supplement," or something like that. You like experiment with it and say, "Well, here's our experience with this. Here's the results we feel we obtained." And the methodology, it's very, very fun. Like most people don't realize how much science the average person does in their day because they're not producing a research study at the end of it. But we're all going through that process of, I have a hypothesis. I think this might provide some benefit. Well, how do I define benefit? And then how am I going to put that to the test? It's your methodology and whatnot. And then you get the conclusion, this helped or it didn't. I feel better or I don't. I saw weight loss or muscle gain, whatever I was looking for. But we don't conceptualize it that way. But we are little science making machines as humanity.
Yeah, that's so true too, and great point on that. I think that we guinea pig ourselves. Like for instance, last week at the clinic, somebody sent us these stress patches. So they were meant to reduce anxiety and stress. And so basically they're just like small little patches that we put on our shoulders. And so we all put them on our shoulders for 3 days. I think it helped. I think there's an element of placebo in that too. Sure. And so that brings up like the point of some of the, do they work and do they work for you specifically? So, everyone's body is the same and different. You know what I mean? It's kind of cool because there's not, you have a heartbeat like I do, you have a brain like I do, all these mechanisms are the same. So then it becomes like, did it work for me? So we're always testing out various like nootropics. We love the idea of nootropics and just those enhancers. So we take different supplementation. And then we also use like other crazy things like peptides and I think that recently that I've got on a kick on that I highly promote that I think a lot of men should look into is testosterone replacement therapy. So hormone replacement therapy has been massive impact for me. But then also like nutrition, how are we incorporating the various like nutritional diets into like when we're timing carbs versus like getting our proteins into play. So just all the things that we encompass, we always like guinea pigging, and then we'll display those to our audience.
For sure. Yeah. And I mean, I like your pillars, as you call them, because you gotta communicate the idea of like, what are we looking at here, and breaking it down into different categories that you can manipulate within the column, so to speak. And fuel being a big one. Like, I don't think a lot of people realize quite how much refined, processed wheat, sugar products we eat, and not enough, maybe say, fresh fruits and vegetables, nuts, meat. It really matters with the way they say garbage in, garbage out. If you're just eating nothing but refined and processed wheat and sugar, your body's not really you're full after eating for a while. Some of these more or less, but you're not really getting that nutrition. You're not really fueling the body. It's like dumping, the wrong. Dumping anything other than gasoline into a car tank. I mean, cars run on gasoline. They need that. You start messing with that or adding things or substituting things that don't burn well in the engine, and you're in trouble.
Yeah, that's so true. And speaking from just everything, right, as far as like how to optimize, we're always thinking about that level of optimization. So even in like a gaming scenario, right, I choose like the game of life, but in a gaming scenario, if we're talking in the digital world, right, you want to be optimized because you want to win the game, right? Sure. And so it can come down to the various fuel you're putting in your body so that you can have like a heightened sense of awareness. And that's what we're always thinking about. Like, how do we play to win the game? And a lot of people don't realize, like, they call them dwarf starches, right? And so I stay away from a lot of like carbohydrates that have like dwarf type starches in them, or like GMO type modified starches. We usually use, like an organic pasta. If I'm eating a sandwich, it's like, it's typical like organic bread. And so that's where I go in kind of like from a starchy perspective. I don't put a ton of starch into my diet, but you're exactly right. So it's like if I'm going to be focused on getting carbohydrates, well, then I want some complex carbohydrates that are going to be easily broken down for me. I typically sway towards like getting berries in. So like, berries are really high in fiber, specifically like strawberries and raspberries. And in the American diet, we're just so deficient in fibers, and fibers is like a critical source of nutrients that we need on a daily basis. We need a minimum of 40 grams. Really, you want to get towards 60 grams of fibers into your diet on a daily basis to have like good productive gut health. And so that's a big thing. The other thing is like having you mentioned meats, is getting quality like meats, like lean meats into your diet, so you're hitting your protein targets. That's a big thing, because as we age, we naturally digress in lean muscle mass, where lean muscle mass is something you want to protect as you get older. So those are just really two key components to really focus on. But then, what are you fueling your body with to have more of like heightened sense of awareness to win the game, right? It could be in the digital world, it could be in real life, but like just speaking from a broader context, like for the purposes of longevity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think video games and just well, especially video games, but games in general is a great analogy for life. Is like there's better and worse strategies for accomplishing goals in every context. And I once upon a time I had the idea of they have that book, Everything I Need to Know, I learned in kindergarten, and then I thought it would. This was years ago. I thought it would be great to write a book. Everything I need to know in life I learned from massively multiplayer online role playing games. Because there's some very interesting things there. I mean, you need it's better to specialize and then work as a team with other specialists to accomplish big goals, and you got to do that to do the big raids and take down the big bosses. But even in small groups, it's better than playing solo. It's more efficient, and also if you're gonna you optimize for your class in a lot of ways. It's like there's things that are better for a cleric or priest, and there's things that are better for the tank, and things that are better for the DPS. And if you mix all that up, and you're not it's kind of that idea of min-maxing. Some people are real obsessive about it, but you can also have just a moderate range of, well, I know this serves my specialty best, and I'm going to go focus on that a little bit more. There's lots of great analogies that can be built around that gaming experience and the social aspect of it, and cooperative teamwork and specialization. So I don't know, maybe I'll write the book eventually.
Write the book, man. Write the damn book.
I think someone already did that about D&D, but we'll see. I don't think anyone's done it about MMOs. But go ahead.
I love that. I love that idea, and I go back to the point that you made earlier, and that I like tried to tap into a little bit. But the idea of like collaboration and community, with like an element of cooperative teamwork. There, I think of this a lot through life. I have to have like proper teamwork with my wife in order to like have a peaceful household, right? We have 3 girls, 8, 6, and 4, and like I have to cooperate, right? We have to have collective teamwork to have like a peaceful household.
Well,
so that's one of my primary focus. Yeah, exactly, a lot of estrogen. But then even in the business world and the gaming world, like I think of this a lot, is like when you get to the top of the mountain, whatever that mountain may be, right? As we dream, when you get to the top of a mountain, do you envision being there by yourself, or do you want to be like, look to your left and look right? Man, we did this, right? It's a lot more fulfilling, and that's that like living that fulfilled lifestyle of, man, hey, we did this together. We rose together. We climbed this mountain together. It's a heck of a lot. It's a heck of a lot better when you share your dreams with others.
For sure. No, and it reminded me of there's an old African proverb. It's like, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go something, go.
You want to go far, go together.
Go far, go together. That's what it is. Exactly. No, I love that too. And also, think about, so that's the process, the journey. But then what's the result? Like, standing on a mountaintop alone, I'd say very few people can consider that satisfying. Consider that a victory, to be there alone, and they prefer to be alone. But that's like definitely the exception that proves the rule. And most people are not like that. It's lonely. It's lonely at the top if you're alone. But if you go there, together, and then just the idea of being on the mountaintop too is like, what's the first thing someone does when they finish a project? Well, they rest for a little bit, like wipe the sweat off, and then you start looking for the next project because you get bored. It's like there's almost from that peak you start looking at the other peaks that you couldn't see until you got there. Now you can pick a new goal, and then you go launch into a new adventure. Most people are like that. Look, I think very few people just this is it. I'm content. I'm just going to sit and do nothing for the rest of my life. No one's really like that. It's very, very, again,
Well,
very few people.
I'm sure you didn't see 176 podcasts when you reached, 20, and then you're like, oh man, I hit 20, but maybe I could hit 40, and then
the funny thing
40
is,
hit and I'm at 80.
I never know if I'm going to get another. This is all dependent on people need to want to talk to me, and they'd have to have something to say, and have to bring me a dream. It's my entire thing is dependent upon others. So this is completely cooperative collaboration focused. That's why I tell folks, this is not it's educational, but it's definitely not a debate podcast. Even if I might disagree with someone, but like I'm more focused on listening to people and having my own interesting things to say, because otherwise what am I doing? But so even if you brought it up, you said, well, I agree to disagree with it. Absolutely. As long as you understand me, I have accomplished my mission. You don't have to agree. That's perfectly fine. And that's what I say too with people's dreams when I do the dream interpretation is the answers are not in me. I make suggestions. I see things from a certain outside the fishbowl perspective, and all I'm doing is telling people, hey, what if you look at this from this angle? Do you see what I see? And if they don't, that's fine. I'm happy to be wrong. I knock on a lot of, rattle a lot of doorknobs that don't come open, because sometimes you got to do it wrong a few times or have the wrong idea because, okay, you've still learned something. You've eliminated all the things that's not great. What is it? What's left? That can be a useful whittling away process as well. It's like carving the marble down to reveal the statue inside. And then sometimes I get lucky and I'm spot on immediately. And like, well, great. That just facilitated the process. And I think the longer I do this, the better I get at that idea of, okay, what is the ideal conceptualization that actually fits this person? And I think doing these sections of the show where I chat with people and get a little bit of an intuitive feel for them, I get better answers, on the dream interpretation part. So on that note though, so you brought your aspirational dreams, but did you actually bring a nocturnal dream during sleep for us to talk about? That may not have been communicated to you that was kind of part of what I do. I never know sometimes until I start talking to someone.
Yeah, no, I you know what, I love that concept too, of like the dreaming of what is done in sleep. You know what I mean? The nocturnal state, and then getting able up and to flesh that out. I'm a spiritual on the spiritual side of things. I lean on focusing on that in that direction of how God's going to just like deliver just like divine influence. And so I actually ask for that quite a bit before I actually go to sleep. I'm like, God, don't download on something on me tonight that I can implement tomorrow.
Benjamin the Dream Wizard wants to help you pierce the veil of night and shine the light of understanding upon the mystery of dreams. Every episode of his Dreamscapes program features real dreamers gifted with rare insight into their nocturnal visions. New Dreamscapes episodes appear every week on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and other video hosting platforms, as well as free audiobooks exploring the psychological principles which inform our dream experience, and much, much more. To join the Wizard as a guest, reach out across more than a dozen social media platforms and through the contact page at benjaminthedreamwizard.com, where you will also find the Wizard's growing catalog of historical dream literature available on Amazon, documenting the wisdom and wonder of exploration into the world of dreams over the past 2,000 years. That's Benjamin the Dream Wizard on YouTube and at benjaminthedreamwizard.com.
And so there's been numerous occasions that has happened in terms of like, hey, what do I need to do? And then I wake up, I actually keep a notepad now by my book stand in case I'm like alerted in the middle of the night, where I can like write stuff down in terms of like action items. And that's an element of dreaming. But I would say that I think a number of years ago, I got into real estate, and that pretty much what exactly happened. I was in a state where I was like pretty he had a pretty bad attitude towards life. I was like, man, where's life's going? And just like super depressed. And it was just that action of through, I think, reading what I was reading probably the day before. And then through that action at night, just like dreaming about various things of like what the intention was. And I eventually created a real estate company out of it and really got in tune with real estate. But I wouldn't take away the fact that it actually came a lot out of like what I was putting into my mind, what I was then delivering through sleep, that like really came to fruition, and then ultimately led to a number of other entrepreneurship activities that I've since ventured into. But I believe wholeheartedly that nocturnal state of just like dreaming is extremely imperative, because I think the body restores itself. And when you can properly restore the body, and that's really where like I go back to kind of the nutritional component and what we're putting into our body so that we can hit really solid like REM sleep. And because there's two different, it's from a scientific standpoint, to get super nerdy with it, our body goes into 3 layers of sleep, so stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3, before it enters into what they call SWS sleep, which is slow wave sleep. And your body starts like it has waves during that period, but you're doing majority of your dreaming during that period of time. And so if you can't efficiently like sleep during that period of time, then you can't efficiently dream though too. Sure. And then on the backside of that is your REM sleep, which your body is at its hottest point. And then when you're actually getting out of REM sleep, that's when you're waking up. But I truly believe that everything that I've really done in life is attributed to this like nocturnal state of me being in line with my body. I think there's like a supernatural component of sleeping that eventually you're taking that dreaming perspective and making it a reality. And so I'm working on some other business activities right now, but I think that dreaming component is something that I ask to step into every day so that I can get divine download and I can project that onto the world. I think we live in this very the energy that which we promote is directed towards our sleep.
For sure. No, I think it's very important. And I wrote down some notes earlier too, like to go back to, it's one of your pillars is good sleep, and it has to be. It's like, it's not optional. It's something human beings physically must do for optimal health. Some people think of sleep as, well, I'll get around to it if I can. I'll get more if I'm able. They don't make it as much of a priority as it really needs to be. I mean, a solid, at least 6, but ideally 8-ish, 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night to be able to go through all those necessary. And then that's just on the physical side. Then there's the psychological side, which is, in a way, dreams are, an opportunity for problem solving. As you've already mentioned, you want to download the answer in that sense. But also it's like defragging a hard drive. It's like you've got so much information that's been added and scattered throughout the day, and it's stuck in a bunch of different places, and it kind of collates, coordinates, coagulates, whatever, all these things into things that make more sense to us and are more easily stored and referenced. So that's in that period. So the period for restoring the body through rest and restoring the function of the mind, because if you don't sleep for enough days in a row, that clutter and deep fragmentation gets so bad you start hallucinating. You start speaking as if you've got dementia. You can't form words, and your mouth doesn't work, slurring, and it gets really bad. So it's like this is like, it's like any other thing you do that throws your body out of physical balance, and you're going to get negative side effects. What else was I going to say on that?
I can add on to that too. Sure. I think that's great. You even say that I love the science behind it, and I'll actually take it one step further. But
oh no. 3312. Hey-oh, lost you for a second there.
There we go.
33.
I don't know what happened there. I guess maybe my internet went out. But I'll take it one step further.
Yes.
Maybe 2 steps further. Actually, I'll do 2 steps further. So what's cool about sleep, and you were talking about that, is that the defragmentation, the body actually sends up like cerebral spine fluid through your spine. What it does throughout the night, it chugs away at your brain, and it chugs away at your thoughts that you had from the previous day. And so like that's part of like that dreaming process, is because it's removing a plaque and then it's taking memory banks. So your reticular activating system and your cerebral cortex is gathering that kind of like informational download in sleep. And then there's an area of your brain called the hippocampus, and that's where long-term memory banks are stored. And so with proper sleep, it's actually taking throughout the day things and banking them, and then dispersing of like kind of those short-term memories that basically are meant for you to never remember again. So it remembers the important one and doesn't like, and it remembers the important one and then defragments, as you were saying, the kind of the unimportant ones. And then the second step that I swear I want to try, because I actually watch a Netflix, and I wish I could recall the Netflix series on it, but a way of dreaming, intentional dreaming, is these doctors, psychologists, they took psilocybin, right? And it was in a controlled environment, but they actually utilized mushrooms to get like to an insane level of like dreaming. It was controlled. So like it was in an environment where like you put, goggles on and you're just laying there. But they utilized psilocybin to like hit areas of the brain and like some intense neuroplasticity that was like crazy. And they took people out of PTSD. They did some wild stuff. And so I wouldn't recommend, obviously, I would say the use of like mushrooms all the time. Mm-hmm. But I think in a controlled environment for like PTSD and defragmenting of the brain, that is something, to be honest with you, I want to try in a controlled environment.
Yeah. And just in the broader idea of chemicals affecting the body, different substances will affect your quality of sleep, better or worse, yeah. and the quality or quantity or variety. It definitely impacts dreams and dreaming for sure. It used to be once upon a time back in the days when they thought the four humors, blood, bile, and phlegm, and all that different stuff. They thought basically dreams were caused by food, because they had some evidence that eating different things. What was it? There was one horror author back in the late 1800s, I think, who swore by eating a particular kind of nut. I don't know what, like a Brazil nut or something like that. That's wrong. Don't quote me. It's in one of the books. Because that particular food she found gave her vivid nightmares that she could then turn into horror stories. So she was like, bring it on. So it's a very interesting. Most people go, God, I don't have nightmares. Those are horrible. I wake up feeling terrible. And she's like, bring it on. I need material for my books. The same with, what was it, Robert Louis Stevenson, Treasure Island fame. He got a lot of his story ideas and plot from dreams, and he believed that little brownies, little people, were coming to him and giving him this. So that a little blending of the physical, the metaphysical, in that sense, the spiritual side of things. And you mentioned that as well, the idea of downloading divine answers from God. I actually have a book about that. It's ABC Book 2, The Mystery of Dreams. It's a 1600 sermon from a preacher in England, talking about how to differentiate dreams sent by God and dreams, delusions from the devil sent to, tempt men astray. And, so as much as I'm into so I divide things into kind of, is the spooky woo, I don't know what to do with. I don't disbelieve it, but I can't, it's not my specialty. I don't consider myself any kind of an authority that understands it. I stick with psychological side of thing, but there's still on that psychological side a very heavy component of mystery that we don't understand. Like, where does a new idea come from? We can prepare and search and struggle and ask, and there's some magic that happens in this gap that then leads to inspiration, a sudden answer. And I think conceptualizing it as divine revelation in a way is absolutely true. And you don't have to be a prophet for the world and telling people about future events, predict, that kind of thing. But for you, it's like, I want an answer. I'm going to sleep thinking about the question, and something magical happens in our brain. We sort through the stuff, and some force that we can't understand gives us an answer, raises up those things from the subconscious that are useful to the question and bring us to I can't tell you how many times I've gone to bed thinking of a question, and in the morning I have an answer. I don't know what happened. I don't even remember the dream. 99% of this funny thing, the dream wizard doesn't dream. I think we all do, but I don't remember mine. So I have no idea what happened, but I have an answer in the morning. So when I tell people to sleep on it, this is not just, give it time. That's true. No, literally sleep, dream to get an answer. I think it's entirely valid and true.
Yeah, I do. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I am hearing you.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So there's I wholeheartly agree with that, because that is something that I think I personally, I'll say I don't do enough. I think there's like a period. I call it discernment, right?
Sure.
Should I act on this or should I not act on this?
Yeah, big question.
The ideas driven.
Sometimes
I
doing
think a
nothing
lot
is
of
the right
us.
thing to do.
Yeah, I think that a lot of us tend to gear towards just inaction, because there's a lot of good ideas out in the world, and then there's no action on the other side of that. And usually, and I'll be honest with you, so we tried this supplementation company. I thought it was a really good idea, and I'm gonna go after it, right? Looking back, to be honest with you, I probably wouldn't have done it. I was like, man, I probably should have slept on that a few more days. But the reality is that there was the lesson learned in all that.
Sure.
And I think it's an element of, there's a gap and a period of the idea origination. I believe that number two, the second piece of that is writing it down. I see you with pen and paper. You're writing things down.
My short-term memory is shit. I have to.
Yeah. I heard a quote one time: "The shortest pencil's longer than the longest memory." So
yeah,
you better write it down when you got a good idea. And then, I take the idea of opening up the parasympathetic through prayer. So for me, it's this idea of I want discernment through an element of prayer and intention. But writing down is, I think, one of the most critical things that we miss. And then you sit and look at that. Maybe you sit and look at that. I read this book one time, and it really changed my life. It actually when I became an entrepreneur at 28. But it was 40 Days to the Work You Love. And he had a rule. If he had an idea, he prayed about it for 14 days, and then there was either action or inaction. It was as simple as that. 14 days. It should not take me more than 14 days to figure it out, right? And so am I going to act on this or am I not? I'll tell you, I probably need to abide by that rule a little bit more of okay, this one's probably not a good one to act on. This one is. But it's the idea of coming up with that idea origination, writing it down, thoughtfully considering it through a level of discernment of all right, now this requires action. What are steps 1, 2, and 3 to make it happen?
Yeah, very cool. That reminded me of something else. Speaking of writing things down, but the idea of the nervous system in general. That's changed over time. It used to be they used to think of it as a fluid system. They had a very pneumatic or hydro. What do they call it? Hydraulic conception of how the body worked. And so that's actually where we came up with the idea of nervous disorders. They thought problems with the brain and that expressed in behavior were as a result of nerve dysfunction. This is early doctors trying to figure out, how does the mind work? They were actually onto something, which we're only discovering in more recent times, which is that we don't just think with our brain. Actually, our brain also communicates with our organs through the nervous system, and it's all connected. So when you, I don't know if you've ever seen the video or the image on the internet. It's like a meme of, okay, so a slight tangent. There's something called Bodyworks. I don't know if you've heard of that traveling show, Bodyworks. It's amazing. So they've plasticized the human nervous system and the brain, and the caption on the meme is, this is the, we are not what we appear to be. We are actually this weird looking tentacled alien that lives inside a meat shell in a way that's actually, and it's communicating with all the different. So they also had the conception of, the emotions living in the heart, specifically physically, the organ. So we know the brain definitely connects to the heart. and it connects to the gut, and it connects to the liver, and all these other places. So we can literally think with our gut and trust our gut in a way, whether that's just metaphorically or literally. Some of these things are, but that's also where we feel the sensations of like sudden fear, anxiety. We have visceral zings that go from our head to the lingam, as they would say in certain religions. And I was going somewhere with all that, but just that fascinating concept that we are more than we think of, and that it's not just the brain, it's also communicating with the entire nervous system. It's like we're thinking with our entire body a lot of the time. So I'll stop there for a moment.
No, I think that's great just to even bring up. I mean, obviously, like, no matter what environment you're in, you're projecting some level of energy, right? Mm-hmm. And so I love the idea of we're always trying to figure out temperature control. I think that's one of the big things, right? When we're in the car, I'm always dialing, like, do I need to wind this back? Do I need it, like, do I need this a little bit hotter? How do I feel? Like, that's actually what's going through, where, like, again, it becomes, we're just a product of environment, where, like, our central nervous system is really reacting to the environment we're in nonstop. And so we're constantly temperature checking thoughts, or I forget, it's some insane amount of thoughts that we have on a daily basis. I forget how many of those thoughts are actually relative, like, to our body's core temperature. And like, do I feel like, is this a good temperature? Is it a little too hot? Is it a little too cold? And all those things come into play, because obviously if you put your hand on a hot plate or a hot stove, your reaction, your emotional energy is going to change a lot, right? You can flip a switch rather quickly, but like, we're always constantly gauging our environment of when we're going into a new environment that we don't feel comfortable with, a lot of new surroundings, right? So our body then goes into our central nervous system, usually ignites, right? We have this like rush of blood going into our prefrontal cortex, where we're then really like trying to read the room, figure it out. Like, what am I doing? I'm new here.
Kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's a great point that you're making, is that we're like literally this jelly shell, and we all, of course, looking different. I don't got that amazing beard that you have, but like, our body's going through a lot of the same exercises when we're going into various environments, and then it's your ability to control that.
Yeah, and that also brought another thought to mind, the idea of how, say, certain reflex actions actually work. And we think of it, or used to think of it, or most people still do in some ways, that, your hand touches something hot or sharp, and then that sensation gets sent to the brain to process, and then to your motor centers to, I better move my hand. Now, that even happening very fast, that's not actually the process. The hand itself, the center of the pain, sends a signal to the motor cortex, move, and then the signal goes to the processing center to go, that's hot. So it actually works in reverse. Our body responds, and that's slightly different than, say, the when you go to the doctor's office, they knock your knee and it hits a nerve that actually contracts the muscle. That's a little different than what's happening with certain reflexes that occur with potentially damaging sensations like sharpness, heat, that kind of thing. We actually move before we think about it, rather than the other way around. Very interesting. Different concept of how the brain is processing things. I think just understanding that sometimes shifts people's perspectives to understand how they're acting. And that can happen with other things like, as I say, trusting your gut around people that feel shady or something like that. People that you're not sure you're safe. You're not sure they're telling you the truth, whatever it is. That actually is something we're sensing that we can't. That's basically what instinct is, the idea that you're sensing something that you can't put into words, can't rationalize, but the sensation is real. Feelings are always real, even if they aren't always rationals. And sometimes you got to trust that and then rationalize it later. Go, okay, why did I have that feeling? And but I think it's been a bit of a disservice in some ways that there's some social pressure not to trust instincts anymore. And I get it that we all want to be rational. You don't want to be irrational necessarily, but just because you can't explain it or put it into words doesn't mean it isn't real or true. So there's that, and I think it's very much related in a different way, but to the idea of, your hand tells you when you touch something hot before you can explain it. And it does the same thing with interpersonal relationships or dangerous physical situations. You might be heading towards an accident ahead of you, and almost like premonitionally you get this vision of an accident, so you slow down, and it's something you can't explain. You saw some erratic driving, you saw someone not giving proper following distance, and you avoid an accident, and you feel like, and then that's where we go to the God sent me a warning, and we get that's a legitimate conceptualization. Where the hell did that come from? We don't know. It might as well be supernatural. God is as valid an explanation as anything else. I'll stop there.
Oh, it's good. Hey, brother, I got to wrap this up in about 5 minutes, so I just want to let you know.
We'll do the outro. Yeah. I was trying to keep an eye on the clock too. So that's
no,
good.
you're good.
Thank you for letting me know.
You're good, but I do want to add to that because I think we're really onto some good information here. It's one of those things too. There was a friend of mine who gave this analogy, and I was like, dude, that's a really good analogy. But if you pictured yourself, you're in a really dark parking lot by yourself. And you're walking to your car and no one's around. You're the only one walking out, but then you hear footsteps behind you. And the footsteps get a little bit faster and your body like tenses up. It goes into the shock mode of fight or flight. And you're like, who the heck is behind me and who's like running towards me? And you're getting into your car and you're trying to get in your car real quick. And then you hear your wife's voice and you turn around. And your body just immediately decompresses, right? You're like, somebody's trying to kill me right now.
Yeah.
Then I turn around and see it's somebody that loves me, that just wants to embrace me. So it's the idea of going back kind of the science element of like our body's reaction to like fight or flight. One thing that I've noticed in my life of like how to like get through scenarios like that. So I'll give you a real life example. I dropped my kids off at school, and you can't make a left going out of school. Like you can, like it backs up traffic. All the parents, there's those parents that want to make a left because they want to save like 30 seconds of their life, so they back up everyone else. So, anyways, I'm a big stickler on that. So there's this lady in front of me, and I'm beeping at her because she's holding up all the traffic. She's trying to make a left. And there's cars passing and she's still trying to make a left. And I'm like, just make the right and then make a quick left. Like you're saving 30 seconds of your life, but you're backing everyone else's up. Right. And so I just rolled out my window a little bit. You can't make a left. Right. She flips me the bird and she's like, he gives me one of those MFers. So reality is that my body wants to, like, my cortisol levels want to shoot through the roof. And I'm like, but then we get the conscious choice, right? It's kind of cool how much our brain can interact with the various hormones that we have in our body of how we react to scenarios then. And so one of the things that I do is I just take some deep gut breaths. You were talking about how the gut aligns with the brain and how I can reduce my cortisol levels when somebody just flipped me the bird and then gives me an MFer. So I just breathe and then I take 10 quick deep gut breaths and just like soothe down. I take my right, come swing back around, and I'm like, it is what it is, right? It like, don't worry about it. Whereas like majority of us, I wouldn't say like majority, so I should just cast this on me, but want to hold on to that stress the rest of the day. Like that lady just MF'd me and flipped me the bird. And then, but what that does in a reaction to our central nervous system is it tightens it up, right? And just increases our stress load where we're holding that burden through the rest of the day. And then it might then later come out towards my wife or towards a coworker or towards somebody else. And we didn't even realize it, right? So there's this element of being able to really be present with your central nervous system on how you're reacting to different scenarios, because like we were saying, you're always gauging. And that's one area where I had to gauge, and then I'd like, just take a breath, Matt, chill for a minute, decompress. Like there's that lady, she ended up taking her left, her day's going on, right?
Yeah.
So just for like food for some thought of how we can react to our central nervous system, on how when life comes at us, we actually have the ability to decrease our cortisol levels that way.
For sure. I think it was that discernment you're talking about. It's like you've got a desire to respond, and it's a natural desire, and it's a reasonable anger. It's like, this person is a jerk, and they're unapologetic, and they're rude and mean, and now I have a choice. Do I carry that negative energy with me for the rest of the day and let it negatively impact my other interactions and relationships? And when you're on edge like that, yeah, something that normally would not have annoyed you, a situation with your wife, you're gonna blow up and go, well, screw you too, instead of going, I understand, let's talk it out, that kind of thing. So, but I won't keep you. We're we never actually got around to analyzing a specific dream sequence. You had limited time, and we had too much fun talking about other stuff, but we got discussion of dreams and sleep and all kinds of
good stuff.
It was great conversation. So I'll wrap it up here. I'll say this has been our friend Matt Tack from Tampa, Florida. He is a podcaster, public speaker, entrepreneur, health aficionado, focusing on functional wellness. You can find him at alessifx.com and the Full Fueled podcast. I wrote that down when you said it so I could say the name again. Link in the description below. Of course, for my part, would you kindly like, share, subscribe, tell your friends? Always need more volunteer dreamers, viewers for the video game streams Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific. This episode brought to you in part by ABC Book 7, Tyrion's Dreams and Visions. You can find all this and more at BenjaminTheDreamWizard.com. And if you'd head on over to BenjaminTheDreamWizard.locals.com, building a community there. It's attached to my Rumble account, free to join. And I'll just say once again, Matt, thank you for a good talk. I've enjoyed having you.
Thanks, Benjamin the Wizard. I appreciate it, and keep crushing it, brother. Appreciate you.
And everybody out there, thank you for listening.